The first gunshot shattered the silence of Zara Hudson's empty ranch house, but it was the second one, aimed at her heart, that truly broke her. Tears streamed down her face as she watched her husband of 5 years collapse in their doorway, blood pooling beneath him as the bandits fled with what little valuables they owned. In that moment, as the New Mexico Territory sunset painted the sky crimson in 1879, Zara's heart hardened like desert clay beneath the summer sun. 18 months later, Zara stood on her porch, rifle cradled in her arms as she surveyed what remained of the once thriving cattle ranch. The drought had claimed most of her stock, and bandits had taken the rest. At 25, her face had already formed lines around her eyes that spoke of grief etched too deep for her years. Her dark hair was always tied back severely, her dresses plain and practical. The locals in the town of Silverdale whispered that the young widow Hudson had gone cold as stone. "You can't keep this up alone, Mrs. Hudson," the banker, Mr. Peterson, had told her just yesterday. "You've got 3 months before I have to foreclose. Times are hard all over the territory." She'd merely nodded, refusing to show the fear that gripped her. The ranch was all she had left of the life she'd built with Thomas. Losing it would mean losing him all over again. As dust rose on the horizon, Zara raised her rifle slightly. Visitors were rare and rarely welcome. The approaching rider came slowly, not in the hurried manner of trouble, but she kept her guard up nonetheless. As he drew closer, she could make out a tall man on a chestnut gelding, his broad shoulders topped by a worn Stetson. "That's far enough," she called when he was within earshot. "State your business." The rider pulled his horse to a stop and raised his hands slightly to show he meant no harm. "Name's Ryker Morrison, madam. Heard you might be looking for help with your cattle." Zara's eyes narrowed. "Whoever told you that was mistaken. I'm not hiring." Ryker removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached brown hair and a face weathered by years under the open sky. He wasn't young, perhaps 35, but his eyes held a quiet strength that made Zara uncomfortable. People with hope in their eyes always did. "With respect, madam, I passed your south pasture on my way in. Your fence is down in 3 places, and what cattle you have left are scattered halfway to the Pecos." He placed his hat back on his head. "I've been working cattle since I was tall enough to throw a rope. I'm offering fair work for fair pay." "I can't afford to pay anyone," Zara said flatly. "I'm willing to work for room, board, and a small percentage of whatever we can salvage." His eyes met hers directly. "Mrs. Hudson, your ranch is dying. Let me help you save it." Zara felt a flicker of something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope, quickly followed by anger at herself for feeling it. Hope was dangerous. Hope meant you had something to lose. "1 week," she said finally. "You can stay in the bunkhouse. It's not much, but it's shelter." "That's all I need, madam. Thank you." As he rode toward the dilapidated bunkhouse, Zara wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The last time she trusted someone, she'd lost everything. The next morning, Zara woke before dawn as always, but found Ryker already in the barn, mending tack she'd been neglecting for months. "Morning, Mrs. Hudson," he said, not looking up from his work. "Hope you don't mind. Figured I'd get an early start." "No, that's fine." She was disarmed by his initiative. "I was going to ride the south pasture today. Already patched the worst section of fence there. Thought we might round up what cattle we can find and bring them to the north pasture. Grass is better there." Zara bristled at his presumption. "Mr. Morrison, this is still my ranch." He looked up then, his blue eyes steady. "Yes, madam, it is, and I'm just trying to save it." They rode out together in stiff silence. Zara watched as Ryker tracked cattle signs with an expertise that even she had to admire. By midday, they'd gathered 17 head more than she'd expected to find. "Your husband ran Black Angus?" Ryker asked as they guided the small herd toward the north pasture. The mention of Thomas made her stiffen. "Yes, we brought the first herd from Kansas 7 years ago. Good stock. Sturdy for this territory." He paused. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Hudson." "I don't need your pity, Mr. Morrison." "Not offering pity, madam, just respect." They worked through the afternoon in silence. Ryker didn't press her for conversation, which Zara appreciated. As the sun began to set, she had to admit they'd accomplished more in one day than she had in weeks on her own. Back at the ranch house, Zara hesitated at the door. "There's stew left from yesterday. You're welcome to join me for supper." Surprise flickered across his face. "Thank you, madam. I'll just get cleaned up." Dinner was a quiet affair, but not uncomfortable. Ryker ate like a man who'd known hunger, appreciative but not greedy. When he complimented her cooking, Zara felt a strange flutter in her chest that she quickly suppressed. "How long have you been in the territory?" she asked, breaking the silence. "About 10 years, came west after the war, Confederate, Union." He met her gaze. "But that war's long over, Mrs. Hudson, and before that, Pennsylvania, coal mining town," he shrugged. "Decided I preferred sky over my head instead of rock." Zara nodded, understanding the desire to leave one life behind for another. "How did you hear about my ranch?" Word gets around. Towns like Silverdale, news travels. "Heard a widow was trying to keep a ranch going on her own." He hesitated. "Heard she was too stubborn to ask for help too." "Stubbornness isn't always a flaw, Mr. Morrison." "No, madam. Sometimes it's the only thing that keeps us standing." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Zara felt as though he could see every broken piece she'd been hiding. But sometimes standing alone means eventually falling alone too. The week passed quickly. Ryker proved himself invaluable, mending fences, finding scattered cattle, and repairing the windmill that had been broken for months. Zara found herself watching him work, admiring not just his skill but his quiet determination. He didn't waste words or movements, everything purposeful and direct. On the 7th day, as they shared another meal, Zara cleared her throat. "Your week is up, Mr. Morrison." He nodded, continuing to eat. "Yes, madam. I still can't offer much in the way of wages. I understand. I'll be packed and gone by morning." Zara took a deep breath. "That's not what I meant. I'm asking if you'd stay on, same terms as before. Room, board, and a percentage when we sell the cattle." His expression revealed nothing. "You sure about that, Mrs. Hudson?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm sure I can't save this place alone." A small smile touched his lips. "Then I'll stay, Mrs. Hudson." As spring turned to summer, the ranch began to show signs of recovery. They found more cattle than Zara had expected, hidden in remote arroyos and canyons. Ryker's knowledge of breeding and grazing helped the herd begin to thrive again. Each day, Zara felt a little of the weight lift from her shoulders, though she kept her guard firmly in place. One evening, as they finished repairs on the corral, a thunderstorm rolled in with startling speed. They ran for the house, reaching the porch just as the skies opened. "That'll help the north pasture," Ryker observed, watching the rain pound the dusty yard. Zara nodded, suddenly aware of his presence beside her, the height of him, the strength, the smell of leather and honest work. She stepped away, disturbed by her reaction. "I should check on that leak in the kitchen," she said abruptly. Ryker caught her arm gently. "Mrs. Hudson, Zara, you don't always have to run away." She stared at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. "I'm not running away, I'm surviving." "Is that what you call this, surviving?" His voice was soft but penetrating. "Seems to me you stopped living the day your husband died." Zara pulled away, anger flaring. "You don't know anything about it." "I know loss, Zara. Different kind, maybe, but I know it." Thunder crashed overhead as his eyes held hers. "Living half a life isn't honoring his memory. It's wasting yours." "How dare you?" she whispered, fury and pain making her voice shake. "How dare you presume to know what I should do with my grief? Because I've watched you these past months. You're strong, capable, determined, but you've locked your heart away so tight you can't even feel the rain on your face anymore." He gestured to the storm around them. "Life is still happening, Zara, and you're missing it." She slapped him then, the crack of her palm against his cheek lost in another roll of thunder. Ryker didn't flinch, didn't move. He simply looked at her with those steady blue eyes that seemed to see straight through to her broken heart. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Not for what I said, but for causing you pain." Zara fled into the house, slamming the door behind her. She leaned against it, breathing hard, confused by the storm of emotions his words had unleashed. How dare he speak to her that way? How dare he see what she'd tried so hard to hide from everyone, including herself? The next morning, she half expected to find him gone, but Ryker was in the barn as usual, saddling his horse for the day's work. They didn't speak of the previous night, falling into their routine with forced normalcy. But something had shifted between them, an honesty that couldn't be unsaid. A week later, they rode to town for supplies. It was Zara's first visit to Silverdale in months, and she felt the stares and whispers as they made their way down the main street. Widow Hudson's got herself a ranch hand, she overheard from the general store porch, where several men sat playing checkers. More than a ranch hand, I'd wager, another replied with a snicker. Zara's cheeks burned, but Ryker seemed unaffected by the gossip. He helped her down from her horse with careful politeness, maintaining a respectful distance as they entered the store. Mr. Peterson, the banker, was inside. His eyebrows rose at the sight of them together. Mrs. Hudson, good to see you in town. Mr. Morrison. Peterson, Ryker nodded curtly. I trust your arrangements are working out. The banker's tone suggested impropriety. Mr. Morrison has been instrumental in saving my ranch, Zara said coldly. The payment for the loan will be ready on time. Peterson looked surprised. Is that so? Well, that is good news indeed. As they gathered their supplies, more townspeople entered, each with poorly concealed curiosity about the widow and her hired help. Zara felt suffocated by their judgment. Perhaps we should return to the ranch, she murmured to Ryker. Don't let them chase you away, he replied quietly. You have as much right to be here as anyone. As they were loading their purchases, a drunken cowboy stumbled out of the saloon across the street. Well, if it ain't the Ice Queen and her lapdog, he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ryker tensed beside her but remained silent. Tell me, widow, the man continued, weaving across the street toward them, did you wait a full day after burying your husband before taking up with this drifter? Zara's hand moved instinctively to the small pistol in her pocket, but Ryker placed his hand over hers, shaking his head slightly. You're drunk, friend, Ryker said calmly. Best head back inside before you say something you'll regret when you're sober, the cowboy laughed. Hiding behind a woman's skirts, not surprised, heard you was Union, probably ran from the Rebs like you're running from me. That's enough, Jenkins, the sheriff called, emerging from his office. Go sleep it off. The man spat on the ground near Zara's feet. Too good to talk to honest folk now, Mrs. Hudson. Time was your husband would have been welcome at any table in town. My husband was worth 10 of you, Zara said quietly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. And Mr. Morrison is a decent, hard-working man who deserves your respect, not your slander. The cowboy blinked, surprised by her defense. Now if you'll excuse us, she continued, mounting her horse with Ryker's assistance, we have a ranch to run. They rode out of town in silence, but Zara could feel Ryker's gaze on her. Thank you, he said finally. For what? Defending me. You didn't have to do that. Zara kept her eyes on the trail ahead. They had no right to speak to you that way. You've done nothing but help me. Is that all it is, Zara? Help, the question hung between them, dangerous and unavoidable. Zara couldn't answer, couldn't admit even to herself what had been growing between them these past months. I don't know what you mean, she said stiffly. Ryker sighed. Yes, you do, but you're not ready to face it yet. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She paced her bedroom, thinking about Ryker's words, about the feelings she'd been denying. Was she really just surviving, not living? Had she locked her heart away so completely that she couldn't recognize what was happening? A sudden commotion outside broke her thoughts. She grabbed her rifle and rushed to the window. In the moonlight, she could see several men on horseback near the corral, rustlers. Without hesitation, she ran outside, firing a warning shot into the air. Get off my land, the men turned, startled. One raised his gun, but before he could fire, another shot rang out from the direction of the bunkhouse. Ryker emerged, his own rifle raised. Next one won't be a warning, he called out. Ride away now. The men hesitated, then spurred their horses toward Zara. She stood her ground, firing again, hitting one in the shoulder. He cried out, falling from his horse. The others veered away, firing wildly as they fled. Suddenly, Zara felt a searing pain in her side. She looked down to see blood spreading across her nightdress. Her legs buckled beneath her. Zara, Ryker was beside her in an instant, catching her before she hit the ground. Hold on, you're going to be fine. He carried her into the house, laying her gently on the kitchen table. I need to look at the wound. Zara nodded, gritting her teeth against the pain. Ryker worked quickly, cutting away the fabric to reveal a deep graze along her ribs. "Bullet just caught you," he said, relief evident in his voice. "It's not too deep, but I need to clean it." As he worked, gentle but efficient, Zara watched his face. The concern there, the care in every movement as he tended to her wound, told her everything she'd been afraid to acknowledge. "Why did you come here, Ryker?" she asked suddenly. "The truth." His hands paused momentarily. "I told you, I heard about a widow trying to save her ranch." "That's not all though, is it?" he sighed, continuing to bandage her side. "No, I knew your husband, Zara." She stiffened beneath his hands. "What? Not well," he added quickly. "We drove cattle together once, about a year before he died. He talked about you constantly, about this place." "How much he loved you both." Ryker's eyes met hers. "When I heard what happened to him and then later that you were struggling, I couldn't just ride past." Tears filled Zara's eyes for the first time in over a year. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have let me stay if I had? Or would you have seen it as pity?" She had no answer for that. "I came because Thomas Hudson spoke of a woman so full of life and love that I felt I knew her," Ryker continued quietly. "I stayed because I saw glimpses of that woman beneath all the pain and grief, and I needed to know her for myself." A tear slipped down Zara's cheek. "That woman died with Thomas." Ryker shook his head, reaching out to gently wipe away her tear. "No, she didn't. She's right here. Wounded, grieving, changed, but still alive, Zara, still capable of feeling, of living." His voice softened. "Of loving again." The truth of his words broke something inside her, not to destroy, but to release. A dam that had held back everything she'd refused to feel since Thomas died. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "I know." His hand found hers, warm and steady. "But you're also brave, braver than anyone I've ever known. How can I love again without betraying him?" Ryker's eyes held hers. "Do you think Thomas would want you to spend the rest of your life alone? To let your heart wither away when it could still bloom?" She closed her eyes, remembering Thomas's laugh, his joy, his endless optimism. "No," she admitted, "he wouldn't. Your heart was hardened by loss, Zara. Let me love you back to life." The simple honesty of his words reached the deepest part of her wounded soul. Without thinking, she reached up, drawing his face down to hers. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like waking from a long, dark sleep. When they parted, Zara saw tears in Ryker's eyes that matched her own. "I've been falling in love with you since the day I rode onto this ranch," he confessed. "Even when you were pointing that rifle at me." A laugh bubbled up from somewhere inside her, rusty and unpracticed, but real. "I was very intimidating, terrifying," he agreed with a smile, "and beautiful." As summer turned to fall, the ranch continued to flourish under their combined care. Zara's wound healed, leaving a scar that she wore as a reminder of the night she began to live again. The rustlers were caught by the sheriff and turned out to be the same men who had killed Thomas, bringing a measure of justice that helped Zara find closure. In town, the gossip eventually died down as people saw the legitimate partnership that had formed between Zara and Ryker. Mr. Peterson was particularly silenced when they paid off the loan in full after a successful cattle sale. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Ryker took Zara's hand in his. "I've been thinking," he said. "A dangerous pastime," she teased. He smiled. "Maybe. I've been thinking that this ranch would benefit from a proper partnership. Legal-like." Zara raised an eyebrow. "Are you proposing a business arrangement, Mr. Morrison?" "Among other things, Mrs. Hudson." He slid from the chair to one knee before her, pulling a small ring from his pocket. "I'm proposing that I love you, Zara Hudson. That I want to spend the rest of my days loving you, working beside you, building a life with you." Tears filled her eyes, but they were different from the tears of grief she'd known for so long. These were tears of joy, of possibility, of a future she'd thought forever closed to her. "What do you say?" Ryker asked, his voice husky with emotion. "Will you marry me?" Zara looked at the man kneeling before her, this man who had ridden into her life when she was at her lowest, who had seen her strength when she could only feel weakness, who had loved her patiently until she could love herself again. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Ryker Morrison. I will marry you." They were wed in the spring of 1882, with wildflowers covering the ranch and new calves dotting the pastures. The townspeople came, many genuinely happy for the couple who had defied expectations and found love amid loss. As Zara stood beside Ryker, speaking vows of love and commitment, she felt Thomas's memory not as a shadow between them, but as a blessing. She would always love the man who had shared her youth, who had helped her build this ranch, who had given her the capacity to love deeply. But now she loved Ryker too differently, but no less truly. "I promise to walk beside you through whatever comes," Ryker said, his voice clear in the spring air. "To love you in joy and in sorrow, in plenty and in want, for all the days of my life." "And I promise," Zara replied, her heart full and open, "to live fully in that love, not just surviving, but thriving. Not just existing, but embracing every moment we're given together." 2 years later, Zara stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching as Ryker taught their 1-year-old daughter to pet a gentle mare. Little Eliza squealed with delight as the horse nuzzled her tiny hand. "Careful there," Ryker called to their 4-year-old son Thomas, who was attempting to climb the corral fence. "Your mama will have my hide if you fall." Zara smiled, one hand resting on her swollen belly where their third child grew. The ranch had prospered beyond their hopes, becoming one of the most successful in the territory. But its greatest treasure was the family that filled it with love and laughter. As Ryker looked up and caught her eye, his face lighting with the same love that had saved her from her grief, Zara felt a completeness she had once thought impossible. Her heart, once hardened by loss, now beat strong and sure, full of love for the man who had taught her to live again, and for the family they had created together. In the vastness of the New Mexico territory, where life was often harsh and unforgiving, they had found something rare and precious: a second chance at love, a new beginning built on the foundation of the past, but not imprisoned by it. And as the sun set over their land, painting the sky in colors of promise, Zara Hudson Morrison knew with absolute certainty that her heart, once broken, was now more whole than it had ever been.